Okay, today I'm going to be taking cuttings from hydrangeas and we're going to be using different potting mediums. We're going to be using perlite, sand, a mixture of potting soil and pine bark. And we're just going to test different things and see what turns out well in 4 to 6 weeks since we're a couple more months away from our first frost. So we're going to see what happens, and we'll start by taking the cuttings of, this is a combination bed of uh, mop heads and also some lace caps over there. So we're going to try those, and also I'm going to try some of the wild hydrangeas, the oak leaf. Okay, for these cuttings, I want to take cuttings that do not have flowers. They haven't put any energy from that particular branch into a flower, so we'll be better off taking cuttings. And I'm just going to cut a little bit down low. As you can see, a flower is not formed yet, and so I'll take quite a few cuttings from that and try to turning it into new hydrangea bushes. Okay, from around the back here, I'm startled by a cat there. We're going to take some of these as well. I don't want to cut it too far back because I think it'll kind of destroy the look of the bed by taking everything down to the ground. So I'm just going to cut back probably 2 or 3 more and we can test that. And I've got some hydrangeas in another area that I'm going to try. So we'll take a few more cuttings here. And hopefully this will be enough for our experiment. And we'll be able to see in 4 to 6 weeks what we come out with. So this is an interesting thing that's happened with these hydrangeas. They're about the same age as the ones you saw in the earlier part of the video, but these do not get as much sunlight. Even though they're getting some sun now, most of the day they're in heavy shade. So as you can see, there's no flowers forming and the leaf size are quite smaller. So these are exactly the same types, but they're just not getting the right amount of sun. So a lot of people believe that hydrangeas do not like sunlight, but that's obviously not true, since these hydrangeas are under irrigation, micro irrigation, the same as you saw in the front, but these obviously are not performing as well. Same soil, same planting method, and like I say, about the same age. But without the right amount of sunlight, they just don't perform as well. So again, with these hydrangeas, I'm going to take cuttings from these, and I'm not as disappointed about cutting these further back because they just haven't done well this year. And I think they've been in this spot for 2 years, and the hydrangeas earlier video that were flowering beautifully, they've only been there for 1 year. So sunlight does make a huge difference. So I'm going to cut these far back, unlike the ones I did in the earlier part, and we can make more cuttings and maybe we can relocate them to a better spot. Okay, these are oak leaf hydrangeas and they've already bloomed for the year. You can see, and there's a lot of seeds here we're going to collect in another video. But these hydrangeas are not under irrigation and they are doing quite well. They get a little bigger each year and we do cut them back, but they perform great. And these do like being in the shade, unlike the mop heads or the lace caps. These can tolerate a lot of shade. This particular spot is even more shade than the secondary spot I showed you. So anyways, I'm going to cut some of these back as well, and we'll take some cuttings from them. And I love the oak leaves because they just require less maintenance, less water, and they're more hardy for my zone here in zone 7. Okay, I'm going to take some cuttings here, and unfortunately it seems like every limb has a flower on it, so that hopefully we won't have a problem with that, but we're going to go ahead and try and see how that works. We'll also be able to, if the cuttings don't work, we can always come back and save these seeds if it's not too early in the year. But I'll preview that in another video, and we'll talk about growing hydrangea from seed. Okay, so I'm using 3 different potting mediums in this experiment. Personally, I usually only use potting soil mixed with the finely shredded pine bark mulch, and usually you'll see that in the stores called soil conditioner. It'll be in a rather large bag, and it's like I say, in the big box store, specifically Lowe's is where I found it, Lowe's hardware. The other medium that I'm going to try today is just regular sand, bag sand, and we'll see how that works. I've never tried sand before. I've always went with the potting soil mixed with the pine bark. The other thing I'm going to try is the black cow. This black cow composted manure is pretty light. It's pretty well draining. And the last thing we're going to try is just regular perlite. Again, I've heard a lot of people say that perlite works really well. I've never tried it. I always stick with the cheapest option, which is just potting soil and the pine bark. So we'll try those, and it's so hot in the greenhouse today, I'm not going to be out there. I'm going to be inside my AC shop putting these together and taking the cuttings. Also, the hydrangea cuttings have already started wilting when I brought them into the greenhouse, so it's going to be better in there where it's AC'd, and hopefully the noise won't be too bad over the mic. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you actually what I'm using here. Now, these cups were purchased on Amazon, and the thing I like about them is they come with a lid, and these are basically used as drink cups or slushy cups, ice cream cups. They're sold on Amazon. But when you put this seal on there at the top, you don't have to worry about taping or anything, because this is actually sealed from spillage, so it will not spill out the sides. Now, if you want to keep airflow in, you could do that, or you could take some plumber's tape. You could take some painter's tape, tape the top, and have it a completely sealed environment. However, I did cut a hole in each one of these so it can drain. You just take your knife, put it in the very bottom, carefully put it in there, turn just a little bit, and you should have enough for drainage, so you don't have to worry about any problems with moisture, too much moisture, which always kills cuttings. So I've taken my knife, I've cut the holes in each cup, drainage holes right there. I'm going to take the cutting, and I'm going to cut it at an angle so we get more surface area for drawing up the water, and just cut that like that. Cut above the second set of nodes. We're going to remove these leaves, and the second set of nodes from the cutting, we're going to cut there. We're going to take our leaves and cut them by maybe 60%, 75%. Okay, and you can see that's our cutting. Right below the bottom nodes, we have our cutting at an angle, so we have more surface area to draw up moisture. And the second set, where new growth can come out, and just enough leaf left to support the plant. Our cup is about a little bit less than half filled. We're going to put it down in there as far as we can go. Then I'm going to put the cap on. And in the beginning, I probably will use some painter's tape to keep it more humid inside of the container. So I'm just going to put a little bit of painter's tape on top. Okay, and there we have it. I still have to water, so I'll have to disassemble this and water and then go back. But it will be sitting inside of, on top of a tote or inside of a tote, and it'll help draw up moisture from the bottom. So the last thing I like to do is label the date so we can remember exactly what date we put this in, just below the soil surface, and just quickly write with a magic marker, preferably a waterproof magic marker. And let's see, we're going to put today's date, which is August the 9th. And we want to remind ourselves what it is. So we're going to put hydrangea. And we'll just put that where we need it. So that is step one. We're going to do with a cutting from either, now this is, like I said, these were mixed. It could be either lace top or mop top. So anyways, we'll find out one day once it blooms. Okay, I've got a little bit too much perlite in there, so I'm going to just empty some of that out. Because the cutting is so high in the cup, we're going to need a little bit less. Okay. All right, now we're going to take our next cutting, do the same thing, directly below the first set of nodes, cut it at an angle. Second set of nodes, cut above it. Remove the two lower leaves. Cut the upper leaves by 75%. Okay, and we're ready to go into the cup. Once again, we'll put our cap on, snap it into place. I really like these cups. They're not expensive. These are basically just disposable cups you're going to see at any lot of smoothie places and other places that have soft serve ice cream. So they're really cheap, and it's a great way to reuse it, and you have your own little mini greenhouse there. So I'm going to top it again, keep moisture in, and I'm going to go to the third cup, do the same thing, and let's see, we're going to need another cutting. And currently these are sitting, they're still wet, they're sitting in a bucket of water so they won't dehydrate quickly because it is a very hot August day. So cut directly below this bottom set of leaves, remove the bottom 2 leaves, cut above the top 2 nodes, 75% or more leaf removal. These leaves are gigantic because they are in the perfect location. I've never seen the hydrangeas so happy as they are this year because of the one, they've been moved to a more sunny spot, and the irrigation now is on micro irrigation, and it waters every day at I think it's like 1 minute 3 times a day. So it's perfect. It's in a perfect location with a perfect amount of water. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the last one. Put our cap on, and I'll have to go back and label these because I like to have the date. I have so many cuttings, it's hard for me to keep track of when I did what. So by having it labeled as the date on it, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to remember, especially when you've got hundreds of cuttings. All right, this is the second batch that I'm doing, and I'm using sand on this one. I normally don't use sand. Like I said earlier, I usually use a potting mix. Make sure I get this right because it's really going to be close to the top, maybe half a cup. I'm not packing it or anything. I'm just putting it in there. I'm trying to be careful as not to overfill. And I'm just kind of curious if the sand will work or how well it will work. It's going to be, as we know, sand drains so easily, so I'm kind of wondering how well it will work, but it's going to be an interesting experiment there. Okay, next set, we're doing the same procedure. Angled cutting, remove the 2 bottom leaves above the second set of nodes, and then remove most of your leaf. Okay, put that in the soil, to the bottom. So it'll have a wicking action, so some of the water from the tray will be wicking back into the cup. And I'll label and date these later. And let's do another cutting just below the second nodes, angle, remove the bottom 2 leaves, cutting there, cut most of your leaf off. I know this is kind of repetitive, but I just want to make sure that it's obvious how I'm doing it, and then we'll come back later and test it. Now, another thing I'm not doing here, I'm not using rooting hormone for this experiment, and I want to see if it will work just as well without a rooting hormone. So we'll try that as well. Last cut. And I've heard a lot of discussion about hydrangeas being so easy to root that they don't even need rooting hormone. So we'll see if that's a truth or if it's a failure. Getting rid of most of the leaf, and I need to get these watered quickly because they are a little wilted. Okay. That one into the cup. And this is this year's growth. Cap these. Cap these. Okay. No, that's being a little difficult there. All right. And we're going to put a little bit of tape on each one. Just to hold the moisture in. And it doesn't necessarily have to be painter's tape. You could use anything that has a really good surface. It can adhere to a really smooth surface. So anyways, that's our second set. And now we're going to go on to our third potting medium. Okay, our third potting medium is going to be the black cow composted manure, about a half a cup. In each one of these cups, I've already punched a hole in each one. So we're good for drainage, just to make sure there. Yes, okay. Going to do that on each cup, and we'll do the same thing half a cup there. Okay, so that's our third potting medium: perlite, sand, and now black cow. Okay, and the black cow I'm pressing down just a little bit, so it'll have a little bit more for the plant to grab onto in the roots. I'm not pressing hard. I'm just lightly pressing there. It's still fairly well draining, and I think it'll do just fine. Actually, I would assume that the black cow would actually work better because the micronutrients, and it's more of a natural product. Okay, we're cutting these in half as usual, or 75 to 80% of them. Okay. One. Taking the second cutting right below the two nodes. Sharp 90-degree cut. Removing the bottom two leaves. Cutting most of the leaf off. Okay. And the last one, this, we'll do the same thing. Moving bottom two leaves, cutting most of our leaf off. And that right there, we're actually way too high on that. Cutting at an angle. Okay, and we're going to cap these and go on to the next potting medium. Okay, the last of the potting mediums, like I said, it's going to be 50% potting soil and 50% of the pine bark. So we're just going to kind of roughly do about 4 or 5 handfuls of each. Mix it well together. And this is my standard potting mix. This is what I think works best for me, but I'm wanting to try new things. So we'll try a few others and see if those actually turn out better. Okay. First cup. Second cup. And the holes have been punched in each one of these. So we'll have a little bit of drainage into the tray. Okay. Still think we got too much there. All right, and now we're going to do the cuttings. We'll find what we did with it there. Now these cuttings, I can instantly tell these were from the area that had less sunlight because the leaves are so much smaller. Okay, we're going to take our first cutting, remove the bottom two leaves just above the second set of nodes, and put that in our 50% pine bark and 50% standard potting soil. Same thing on the second one. Remove the leaves. Do a leaf reduction on the top two leaves. Put it back into our potting medium, kind of press it down a little bit there. And the third cutting, angle. I hope I'm remembering to do angles on each one of those to give it a little bit of extra chance of being successful. Okay. And the third set of the third cutting. Okay. And we'll put our cap on. Okay, we're putting our caps on. And I'm not going to tape these now because I want to do a little bit of watering. And I'm going to put them in trays, and I'll show you how I do the trays and what preventive measures I take to prevent mosquitoes, because sitting water in the trays will attract mosquitoes. It's just not going to be a sealed tote or a sealed compartment where the water is exposed to the air. Mosquitoes will come in and lay their eggs, and you'll have a lot of larvae. Okay, so this is the tote I'm going to use to store them outside cuttings. But the problem is this is not a draining tote, so there's no way for the water to drain out of it. So I'm going to have to drill a hole fairly close to the bottom so it does not hold a lot of water. I want it to hold just a small, thin layer, maybe less than 1/4 of an inch of water, maybe even just a half of that. So let's drill a hole. So we'll have a little bit of drainage. And I'm going to put 2 holes in it. You can't quite see it, but one in the center. Okay, and then one on the other side. So even though there will be a little bit of standing water in there, the holes are fairly close to the bottom. And then that way, there'll be a wicking action from the bottom of each plant, and it can have just a small amount of water here. It can wick it up to the cutting, and there's not a danger of having too much moisture. So I'm going to get this ready and then do the last section. Okay, there is one last thing I like to do. Anytime I have standing water, I add these mosquito bits to the tray where the water is going to be standing. So the mosquitoes will come in, lay their eggs, the larvae will develop, they'll eat the mosquito bits, and it will kill the larva, so you don't have to worry about a massive explosion of mosquitoes. You sprinkle some of those in, and it works great because I have a lot of bonsai, and I've been using these for over 10 years, and it really helps cut down on the mosquitoes in your yard area. So just try those if you have a lot of standing water. Safe for pets and birds. It won't hurt them at all. It's only harmful to the larvae. All right, so getting ready to water, I discovered one final thing. My painter's tape is not sticking as it should. I don't know if it's just a very low quality brand of painter's tape, but I'm using this Scotch, very old Scotch tape I had found in my shop. And it's just an electrical tape. It's very, very sticky, and it's very good for being waterproof. So I'm just going to carefully put that on each one, take these outside. And one last thing that I failed to mention is I want to put in just a small amount of fertilizer. Even though these are cuttings, they'll still be roots, and it will help benefit the plant. So I'm just going to sprinkle just a very small amount in each one, maybe just a pinch in each one. And that small amount of fertilizer will also boost the root growth and help the cutting get a head start. And so next spring, when you go to put these in a larger pot or in the ground, their root system will be even better. So not a lot, just a few of these. And this is slow release, so you don't have to worry about burning the plant. Osmocote, slow release. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to try to water these very gently with a mist. And just continue to water there until everybody's saturated. I love these Orbit sprayers because you can adjust so easily. For instance, on a shower, you can have a full shower. We'll just slowly bring it off, so it's very gentle. Right now I'm just misting. I want to make sure everybody gets plenty of water, and there's a little bit of standing water in the bottom of the tray. And then we'll put it into place. We don't have to worry about mosquitoes. Hopefully the sides are high enough so we don't have to worry about squirrels or other animals coming in and knocking them over. I might add 3 more so everything will be kind of wedged in there. Anyways, I'll finish doing that and show you one last trick, or show you one last segment to the video. Okay, so I'm going to add a few more drainage holes. I don't think we have enough. Okay, so I think we have enough drainage holes now. The thing is if your tray's not perfectly level and you only have drainage on one side, you'll have standing water too much on one side. So just make sure this is perfectly level, or you want to put in more drainage holes. I've watered everybody thoroughly, and what I want to make sure before I put the tape back on or add the tape for the first time, I just want to make sure the moisture is gone so we don't have a problem with the tape adhering to the surface. Is very smooth, slippery, so it might not adhere well. We'll try it now. Like I say, the painter's tape that I bought before was a lot better quality, and it would not stick. So I had to switch over to a different type of tape that I just happened to find. This is Scotch electrical tape. And so the exact name of it is very sticky. It seems to be really good. It's called 2000, made by Scotch, Electrician's Bundling Tape. So I can tell you that it's very sticky and it should work great even with water, because usually electrician's tape tends to be more waterproof. So I'm going to just add one to each one and we'll finish this up. Another thing to know is do not put these in direct sunlight, because it will fry each one of them and they will not have a chance to survive, because the temperature inside of each cup will become so hot. Like I said earlier, it's a mini greenhouse. So if you've ever been in a greenhouse without proper ventilation, it gets really hot really fast. And even with ventilation, it can get really hot. So I'm just making sure everybody is sealed. Every single cutting is sealed. Almost done there. And then I'll put it in its final spot on the north side of the greenhouse. And I won't have to worry about these for a while. I'll check them, once or twice a week and make sure that they're not dehydrated, make sure there's enough moisture. Just a couple more and we'll be done. And that'll take care of those. So these are protected from falling over. They're kind of tall, so the only thing that could take one of these out is a human hand. I don't think an animal is going to be able to come in and do much damage. They might push them around a little bit, but since there's no food smell or anything like that, they should leave them alone. We have a lot of squirrels, raccoons, possums, and the occasional stray cat that comes by. So this should be safe inside of this container. Okay, so I placed them in a safe place under the shelf and under the shade fabric. It's the north side of the greenhouse, so there shouldn't be any chance of these getting overheated or anything happening to them. Occasionally you will see, if there's too much light, you will see your leaves turn from a green to a purplish brownish color. That's perfectly normal, and with your hydrangeas, that is. So just keep an eye on them once or twice a week, water them if necessary, but this should keep enough moisture inside of the container that it can wick back up through if it needs it. So that's the way you do hydrangea cuttings.